Hi everyone, this is Dr. Bose here. Today we'll talk about China and her atrocities. This video might not be too big just for uploading and watching it. I am keeping it short and sweet for all of you to understand. We know about China, but let's talk about the different avenues how China is attacking India, America, and other part of the world. The Chinese are completely inferior when it comes to humanity. They are encroaching different parts of African nations, stealing their rich resources, Mother Earth resources. They are stealing their rare earth metals, their natural resources, inert metals, and whatever elements, and so on and so forth. Now, China is controlling the African nations by funding weapons and money to the African warlords who are giving the Chinese military commanders, spies, scientists who are working under the Chinese intelligence as bodyguards. These Africans are bodyguards, the African warlords are the bodyguards of the Chinese scientists and the Chinese military. So the Chinese are retrieving those staffs and coming back. Like yesterday, the Niger government been kicked out of its presidential palace. Why? The president of Niger has been kicked out of his presidential palace and the government went broke. Why? Because Niger is one such place in Africa, Central West Africa actually, where they have a largest amount of uranium mines owned once upon a time by the French. One of those mines are called as Arrive. That mine had a huge left out mines. Chinese scientists going to those mines, they're retrieving the left out uraniums with the help of notorious terrorist organization called as Boko Haram, which is operating in Niger, Mali, Chad, Nigeria, along with a fragment of Al Qaeda and ISIS, all working with the Chinese, plus Hezbollah. So these organizations are working with the Chinese government and they're retrieving those uraniums, they're taking it to Beijing, and from there they're started doing the bids, higher bids to the countries, and they're giving the uranium to those countries. So this thing is a very crucial action China is taking. Then, to take down America, China is sending her soldiers who served the Chinese PLA 2 years, 3 years, and then they've been given certificates of doctors and engineers and told them to go to American universities, enroll yourself as PhD students, do your PhD, get your certificates from PhD, and steal the scientific research of other American scientists or other scientists from different parts of the world and send it back to Beijing. The best example of that is the JF-20 of the American F-35 fighters design, which the Chinese built with JF-20, although they are not successful. China is a nation of thieves, robbers, manipulators, deceptors. The best example of that goes to the Chinese art of war. Sun Tzu, the father of the Chinese art of war, called as Sun Tzu. But who is Sun Tzu? And how come Sun Tzu became so famous in the world while the man who created those art of war is not even known to any person apart from Indian? And not every Indian know about it. This entire gamut of the art of war actually written by Shukracharya, Daitya Guru Shukracharya in the Hindu mythology. Foreigners say mythology, I don't say mythology. He was a ardent supporter and a follower of Lord Shiva, who has given him the mouthpiece of war tactics. He wrote Shukraniti. And then Chanakya, another great literature, you can say, guru, expert in tactics and strategy, diluted, written the diluted version of the Shukraniti in 156 of his tactics. Out of that, 32 has been stolen by the Chinese thieves called as Fa Hien and Hun Sen, who named themselves as globetrotters, but they were Chinese spies. They came to India, they traveled different parts of India, they drawn our pictures of our temples, our designs of many other technological designs. They stole each and every information from our scriptures. They went back to China. They given that to their team of strategists sitting there in China, and then they created an amazing deception theory. It's called as, the Chinese deception is called as Qi Pi Yang or Yifiang. This theory of Yifiang means what they have done. There was a man called Sun Tzu who been given assigned this task of jotting down each and every strategy in a proper manner. And after they have written that, they binded the books, but they changed the dates. They mentioned Sun Tzu was born 300 years before Chanakya. That is called deception. That's the flipping of the information which they are famous for. And they don't want anyone to take the credibility of naturality or the genuinity. So they don't want the Indians to get the credibility or the genuinity. So what they have done, they have changed the dates on the calendar. Followed by Sun Tzu, it was Sun Bean. And then they spread this information. But the funniest part is, apart from those 32, there are another 4 as per the 36 strategic gems are called as stratagems. Those 4 strategic gems came from all the way from Japan. In Japan, the olden days, there was an amazing warrior who never lost a single war. He fought 47, he won 47. And that's why he's been called as the Ronin or the samurai warrior, undefeated samurai warrior. His name was Kanakanta Kanzi Miyamoto Musashi. Now, Kanakanta Kanzi means the samurai warrior of the gods, and Miyamoto Musashi was his name. He wrote the Book of 5 Rings. Out of those, only 4 chapters been stolen by the Chinese, and they added that with the Art of War main book. So it became the 36 stratagems for every tactical and strategic analyst across the globe. For example, when they're attacking in Galwan, they're actually meeting somewhere in other parts, which means chapter 6 says, clamor in the east, clamor in the west and fight in the east. Which means you are talking with your enemy in a meeting. At the same time, at the back of your enemy, your soldiers are going and sabotaging them. Chapter 30 says you should have an open smiley face in front of your enemy while you are taking him down. So each and every tactics is related with the ancient Indian art of war or warcraft. Everything was connected from India. Everything has been taken and stolen from India. Yet some Indians still believe that China is a great land and China is the country of developed nation. How come a developed nation have 50% jobless people across the country? As well as the best example of deception is China has a GDP of 19.75. But that's not true. China has lured, entrapped with the help of honey trappers all the vice presidents and presidents of IMF and World Bank and Statista. And what they have done instead of that, they have lured them, they have blackmailed them, and they forced them to write 19.75, whereas The official GDP of China right now is 8.65. Not too much compared to India. Chinese are buying different ranches across United States. Chinese oligarchs are buying different ranches across United States. Huge portion of empty barren land in US being bought by the Chinese, funded by the Chinese government as well. But with an American face in front of them, nobody can doubt that it's a Chinese land. Chinese are pushing the Chinese immigrants from Mexico, Chile, Honduras, El Salvador, Brazil, Argentina, Cuba, Venezuela, all these nations. But Mexico is their hub. The Chinese MSS has a huge headquarters in Mexico, working with the MS-13 cartel of the Mexican drug cartel unit. And MS-13 is supporting the Chinese because they have a good bonding between China and Colombia and Mexico. When it comes to drug, China is famous for opium and weaponry, and Colombia and Mexico is famous for its cocaine. So that is eventually working out. The Golden Triangle and the Golden Crescent. The Golden Triangle means China, Burma and Pakistan. And the Golden Crescent is Afghanistan, Pakistan and Iran. But what is the Caribbean Crescent? Caribbean Crescent is in Bahamas, Barbados, which is controlled by the Chinese triad, mafia triad. The funniest part is terrorists like Hezbollah, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Chinese triad, Russian Bratva, MS-13 and Colombian FARC guerrillas are all involved in this drug trade, and their headquarters is in Barbados. It is called the Caribbean Crescent. So Mexico is the ground zero for the Chinese MSS, who are pushing the Chinese citizens who are engineers and doctors. Obviously they have a previous life of working with the Chinese intelligence and Chinese army. They've been pushed as immigrants, and when being caught by the American border controls, they've been said, oh my gosh, we are poor people, we've been thrown out of our country, so we came down all the way, we seek asylum. We don't have food for 7 days. That's how they treat. And they've been given the chance to sneak inside. Half of the America has been under the Chinese rule. UK has fallen. France is fighting. Russia is the only nation where the Chinese are shit scared of doing any kind of mess, because Russia know each and every trick of China. So their focus is in India. Break India. So what they have done, the Chinese started supporting the opposition. The media houses of India are being supported by the Chinese intelligence. They are writing wrong informations when about China and India relationships. They never write about 1967, the bloody nose given to the Chinese. They never talk about that when there is a war between India and China in future, China cannot survive, because China is not at all a warrior on the war zone. China is a warrior on the psychological operation zone, or PSYOPs. But in my version, I call it PSYSOPs, Psychological Special Operations. So, the PSYSOPs and PSYOPs created by China can be broken if we follow the Chinese art of war minutely and we implement the same thing. For example, in Manipur, what happened in Manipur? Chinese intelligence injected people 7 years, 8 years back from Kunlun, Huxiang, Unsha provinces to Myanmar, Arakan and Rakhine valleys and Shan provinces. In fact, Shan province has the highest amount of drug manufacturing offices inside with the help of the Chinese intelligence in Myanmar. So these guys can speak in Mandarin, they can speak in Manipuri, they can speak in Arakan language, they can speak in Rakhine language. So this guy crossing over to Manipur one fine day, fell in love with a Manipuri girl. They got married, they got kids, and this guy, after 1 year or 2 years of hibernation, he goes back to Burma in search of job. His wife is in Manipur, his kids are in Manipur, but he was an activate. He's been activated now, so that's why he went back to his Chinese boss, situated undercover in Myanmar, and there they are supported by the cookies. The cookie headquarters is in Burma. So you need to understand those things. If you keep the Indian Army, Indian BSF, Indian security forces out of the Indian border of Manipur, Mizoram, and Nagaland, China can easily encroach the land by brainwashing the people. And we fail because the wife is from India and the husband is from Myanmar, and no wife wants their husband to be taken away by the armed forces. So they're stopping the soldiers. What in return of that, these cookies or these Chinese intelligence officials doing, they are wearing the same uniform of same alike uniform like the Indian armed forces, and they're doing the rape and the atrocities, and the people thinking in those interior rural villages that the Indian army or the Indian soldiers have done that. But it was not the Indians, it was the cookies or the Chinese intelligence dressed as cookies. Last year we lost one colonel ambushed by the Myanmar people, but they are not Myanmarese or the Burmese, they are all Chinese, dressed as Burmese. This is called deception. So to destroy that, all we have to do, we have to create the counter-offensive for destroying China by creating rogue elements in Vietnam, in Mongolia, as well as we have to steal, destroy, and sink the Chinese cargoes in high seas. We have to create a group of special forces dressed as pirates destroying the Chinese cargoes, because China can never fight a naval war with India, because we can block the Sunda and the Malacca Strait and we can destroy the Chinese Navy within 5 days. Entire Chinese Navy will be grounded and can be sank in the water. So China is shit scared of India, but China is trying to pretend that they are very strong. China is not strong. We can definitely defeat China psychologically, economically, militarily, diplomatically, and as well as spiritually. So today I end this topic. Let's come and memorize this, and let us join again in the next episode of China Files. So till then, I call it a very good day and good night to you. Jai Hind and Vande Mataram.